Dear board members of the Racial Equality Front, imagine you're a high school student. You're 15 years old and you're on the football team. After finishing a biology project on DNA structures, your teacher takes a picture of you. You hold up your thumb, forefinger, and middle finger in the picture, proudly showing your number on the football team. Next week, because of the picture taken of you, you are called in the principal's office. It is about the symbol you made with your fingers. The administration thinks it's a gang sign. The vice principal proceeds to call you a gangbanger, and he suspends you for 5 months for holding up gang signs. According to Catherine Monahan, author of From the Schoolyard to the Squad Car, you are now 74% more likely to be arrested in the following months, and according to Brookings EDU, you are now roughly 3 times less likely to finish high school, all because you've held up 3 fingers in a photo and were suspended. This was a true story, which happened to Dantadrian Bruce, a black student attending predominantly white Olive Branch High School in DeSoto County, Mississippi. Sadly, as many of you have experienced for yourselves with other cases, this tragedy is the product of a harmful and racist structure, the school-to-prison pipeline. We believe that you, at the Racial Equality Front, as a nonprofit, activist organization, especially concerned with racial issues, are obligated to stand up for your neighbors, family members, and fellow human beings by taking action against the school-to-prison pipeline and the racial inequality it causes. Our definition of the school-to-prison pipeline: it is a system where school policy creates an environment of criminalization for many American students. This environment of criminalization disproportionately affects Black and Hispanic students. Additionally, we believe the school-to-prison pipeline to be unjust. The pipeline itself functions simply. School resource officers, i.e. police, and zero-tolerance policies already make schools feel punitive. And then, when a student commits a relatively minor offense, maybe possession of marijuana, or skipping school, or even putting up 3 fingers in a photo, they receive a severe punishment, such as expulsion or suspension. Different controlled studies, like those done by Catherine Monahan and Dr. Alina Mendez, show that students who are suspended or expelled are far more likely to be imprisoned in their lives, which carries powerful negative consequences. Perhaps the most unjust characteristic of the school-to-prison pipeline is its racial bias. As with many institutions in this country, the school-to-prison pipeline disproportionately disadvantages Black and Hispanic students. Here, we see the destructive end of the school-to-prison pipeline, in which an inordinate amount of minorities are funneled into the criminal justice system. This racial bias even applies to our most disadvantaged youth, students with disabilities. The negative outcomes of the school-to-prison pipeline are significant and far-reaching. We break them up into 3 categories: economic, social, and ethical. First, there is a significant economic cost in the school-to-prison pipeline. On average, it costs $31,307 per year to just imprison one person. In some states, this cost can be as high as $50,000 or $60,000. The school-to-prison pipeline costs us all for each additional inmate. Second, the school-to-prison pipeline carries a significant social cost. Every individual incarcerated due to the pipeline is a family member torn from their family, or is a friend unable to support their friends. Family structures and communities, especially minority family structures and communities, suffer when individuals who are imprisoned who otherwise might not have been criminal. Additionally, the school-to-prison pipeline represents a powerful structural injustice. Some individuals, because of their race or socioeconomic background, are more likely to experience severe punishments for minor infractions. These individuals are, therefore, in far greater danger of eventual imprisonment. Over time, disproportionate suffering, lack of education, and incarceration can create harsh, racist stereotypes against minorities. Many Americans now feel that minorities tend to engage in more violence and criminal activity, rebelling instead of participating in higher culture. This is evidenced by police discrimination, a plethora of Black criminals on television, and the recent actions of our President Donald Trump. The pipeline appears to group minorities directly into this category by punishing them for supposed crimes and unjustly depriving them of education. This is a human rights violation for those disadvantaged by the school-to-prison pipeline, and for a country which supposedly values justice, it is a huge ethical inconsistency. We all function within the unjust system which leads to these structural disadvantages, and therefore, we are all morally responsible, including you, at the Racial Equality Front, for the school-to-prison pipeline. Before we discuss how this moral responsibility should be discharged, we must understand the historical context and structural injustices behind the school-to-prison pipeline. The roots of the school-to-prison pipeline extend through America's 400-year history of racial injustice. But, more recently, the pipeline is a direct consequence of 50 years of public policy intended to reduce drug use and violence within American society and its schools. Drug use first became a national issue in the 1970s when Richard Nixon called drug abuse public enemy number one and declared a war on drugs. According to Dr. Lorna Hermastura, a research professor at the University of Texas, the school-to-prison pipeline is a direct descendant of the war on drugs. She shows how Nixon's Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act of 1970, which was reauthorized by Ronald Reagan and then by Bill Clinton as the Drug-Free Schools and Communities Act of 1994, tied federal funding to student behavior reporting and forced schools to use zero-tolerance policy. These zero-tolerance policies mandated severe punishments for students' offenses and shifted the focus of teachers away from teaching and toward student behavior reporting. Like many punitive policies in America, zero-tolerance policies inordinately affected Black and Hispanic youth. Additionally, anxiety over super predators and violent incidences within public schools in the 90s, such as the Columbine massacre mentioned by the Denver Foundation's Director of Education, Sarah Park, led to an increased commitment toward harsh punishments and security within America's schools. As our use of phrases such as structural injustice and moral responsibility have hinted, we believe that the best approach which you, at the Racial Equality Front, as an activist organization, can take to address the school-to-prison pipeline is Iris Marion Young's structural approach. The structural approach says that there are structural injustices, deformities in the structure of our society. Individuals are disadvantaged by the system, and because we all participate in and even sometimes benefit from the system, we are morally responsible for those structural injustices. According to Young, individuals are disadvantaged in two key ways: by domination and by oppression. Domination involves the prohibition of individuals from determining the course of their own lives, while oppression involves the restriction of an individual's ability to express themselves. The school-to-prison pipeline is a perfect example of both the domination and oppression aspects of structural injustices. Children in the school-to-prison pipeline are dominated when they are deprived of the right to an education by severe punishments. Additionally, children in the school-to-prison pipeline are oppressed by the punitive environment of schools, which makes them feel like criminals, by their powerlessness when receiving harsh punishments, and by the marginalization they experience upon suspension or expulsion. These same children then experience another oppressing structural injustice. They are far less likely to graduate high school after receiving severe punishments and are far more likely to be imprisoned. Finally, the last structural injustice of the school-to-prison pipeline is this racial bias. Because of racial prejudices in this country, white children are far more likely to benefit from the school-to-prison pipeline, while Black children are far more likely to be negatively affected by it. We are all morally responsible for the school-to-prison pipeline and its structural injustice. To discharge ourselves of this moral responsibility, we must take collective action against the causes of the school-to-prison pipeline. The causes of the school-to-prison pipeline are police presence in schools, zero-tolerance policies, severe punishments for minor offenses, and racial discrimination. First, to address the presence of police at school, we recommend that you, at the Racial Equality Front, use the power of your organization to lobby for legislation. This legislation will restrict the amount of school resource officers within schools and make school environments feel less punitive. Second, to address zero-tolerance policies, we recommend the Racial Equality Front lobby, this time to repeal legislation. The Drug-Free Community Schools Act of 1994 has to go. Federal funding can no longer be tied to student behavior, and zero-tolerance policies should no longer be mandated. Additionally, new legislation which restricts or eliminates zero-tolerance policies in schools must be passed. Third, to address severe punishments, we propose that you use the considerable legal power of the Racial Equality Front to represent mistreated students like Dante and Bruce in legal action against schools. In this way, schools will be held accountable when they deliver unjust punishments and, therefore, will be far less likely to deliver these punishments. Finally, the racial bias within the school-to-prison pipeline must be addressed. Cases like Sheff versus O'Neill and McFadden versus Board of Education recently attempted to address racial discrimination in schools and the school-to-prison pipeline with mixed results. Following the lead of these cases, you, at the Racial Equality Front, must lobby politicians, legislatures, and school districts alike to oppose racial discrimination in schools. Additionally, You must use the tremendous influence of this organization to raise awareness regarding the school-to-prison pipeline and the general population. Can the Racial Equality Front do all of this? Oppose the school-to-prison pipeline on so many levels? To us, the answer is an unequivocal yes. With activists such as ourselves, and a powerful activist organization such as yourselves engaging in collective action, the possibilities are almost endless. Yes, the problem which we're facing is huge. We're fighting against 400 years of institutional racism and 50 years of counterproductive public policy. But your organization is capable of addressing the structural deformities outlined earlier, which calls the school-to-prison pipeline. By doing so, you can develop a far more just society and prevent students like Dontadria and Bruce from ever having to face such unjust circumstances again. The opportunity we've presented to you is too good to pass up. Your organization can make a profound difference in the lives of millions and positively affect the racial situation within this country in a huge way. These lofty goals are attainable through the efficiency and power of Iris Mary Young's structural approach. Thank you, board members of the Racial Equality Front, for your time, and we hope that you will consider what we said to you today.